So welcome back in this second part of chapter number 3 of class 7 NCERT geography, our changing earth, the chapter that we were dealing with. We have already dealt with the tectonic plates or the lithospheric plates, the way they are fragmented into smaller fragments or pieces. Then we have seen the endogenic and the exogenic forces and the earthquake, volcanoes, etc. we have already dealt with. Now in this part of the video we will look into the exogenic forces, that is the forces that are happening on the earth's surface. And within these exogenic forces we will deal with three important phenomena, three important processes that causes changes on the landscape of earth's surface, that is over the earth's surface. So three important phenomena that we will come across is the erosional activities, right, the erosion. Then we have the deposition activities, and we have also to look into the weathering. We will start with weathering, this is our first, and okay, then we will have erosion, and then we will have deposition. We will study not in it means first what happens, is the weathering of rocks. So let's try and understand what is this weathering phenomena. Okay, so as far as weathering is concerned, weathering is basically the breaking of, it's basically the breaking of rocks into a smaller fragments. It is the breaking of rocks into a smaller fragments. What is happening here? The rock is breaking up, and it is breaking up into smaller fragments. Let's understand through a picture. Suppose this is a rock, right? What happens over a period of time with the with the exposure of this rock to the rain, to the wind? Wind has a lot of energy with it. It always strikes on the rock, and this collision of wind and the air particles, the dust particles that are within this wind that flow along with the wind, they strike with the rocks. And also there are temperature differences, and because of the temperature differences, for example, in the daytime you will find that temperature is usually high, and in night time the temperature goes down. So with increase and decrease in temperature leads to expansion and the contraction of this rock materials. Okay, so what happens over a period of time when all these forces are acting in conjunction with each other? There are cracks that develop into rocks. For example, this is a crack that has developed into the rock. Okay, then also there is crack here that has developed. So over a period of time these cracks will cause disintegration of rocks, that is weathering of rocks, and the rock will get fragmented into smaller pieces. Many smaller pieces will come out of this rock. Okay, so again when the wind, the rainwater, the temperature differences will again cause the fragmentation of this rock, and eventually ultimately what will happen, that this rock will be broken up into many smaller pieces. Okay, so this is the basic idea behind the weathering phenomena. Okay, now what is erosion? Let's understand erosion. Okay, so erosion, when we say erosion, erosion is basically, it is the removal of uppermost layer of rocks or soil. It may be also soil of which erosion can take place. So let's understand what is this erosion. Okay, let's suppose this is the rock. What happens, this rock is made up of many layers, right? The layer which is exposed to the environment, this layer is has the maximum exposure to the rainfall, to the temperature differences, and also to the wind. So what happens over a period of time, that the uppermost layer somehow gets detached from this main rock, this parent rock. And what will happen, that this rock, the uppermost layer of rock, will get broken into very tiny pieces in granular form. And this smaller particles that gets accumulated because of detachment from the rock, after a period of time, wind will carry over these smaller particles from the rock surface. Okay, these smaller particles that have detached from the rock, it will be carried away by the wind along with it, or with rainwater also. And this will be carried away from here. As you can see, it has been carried away by wind. Okay, now the layer which was just beneath this layer, the layer which was just below this uppermost layer, now it will get exposed. It will get exposed to the wind, to the rainwater, to the temperature differences, and again the same process will happen, that this exposed layer, now the outermost layer is this, so this layer will again get into a smaller pieces of rocks, and again wind will blow away this a smaller pieces from here, and it will take it away from here. So this will again be removed. So again what will happen, the layer of the rock which was beneath this second layer, the third layer will get exposed, and ultimately over a period of time what will happen, that this rock you see here, it will be like, it will be eroded, and to form a smaller rock over a period of time, it will be left like this. Okay, so this is erosion. So erosional activities are something that is not taking place only on the rocks. Even the soil also undergoes erosional activities. Let's so this is, suppose this is the soil. So we have the uppermost layer of the soil, which is a very fertile, which adds fertility to the soil. Okay, now what happens after the rainfall occurs, or when wind flows with great speed, this uppermost layer of the soil gets removed from here. Okay, if the soil has grasses, the grass will prevent the uppermost layer of the soil from being getted, from being getted, the grass. If we have grass here, so the uppermost surface of the soil, the uppermost layer of the soil, will be prevented from the wind. Wind would not be easily able to erode away, right? But when you have no soil cover, what happens, because sometimes due to overgrazing, you do not have any grass layer over this soil. So the uppermost layer of the soil is now exposed to the wind or the rainwater. So it will be easily carried away along with the wind, and so this layer will be removed. And when this happens, we call it land degradation or soil erosion. When soil erosion happens, the productivity or the quality of soil gets decreased, and when the quality of soil decreased, you will see that the productivity of land goes down, and when productivity of land goes down, farmers' income also goes down. So land erosion is something that has to be prevented at any cost. Okay, so this is erosion. Now there is third activity, that is called deposition. Okay, deposition is very simple to understand. I had already said that these winds carry away the particles of these rocks that have detached from the rock, along with each other. Now when wind is flowing with some speed, it will be able to carry away these particles. But when wind's speed goes down, when wind is not able to carry these particles further away, these particles will get deposited somewhere. So basically this is the process of accumulation. This is the process of accumulation of withered material, either withered material, okay, or eroded material. We have already seen in the first chapter how sedimentary rocks are formed. Similar phenomena is occurring here. The withering of rocks and the erosion of rocks or the erosion of any surface, okay, that happens, that causes the deposition. So it is the ultimate result. So when these particles are getting eroded, it will get deposited somewhere layer by layer. Okay, whenever the wind speed will fall, the particles will not be able to be carried away by the wind. That is, wind has lost its velocity, and that is why, because of decreased velocity, the wind is not able to carry away these particles any further, and so it has to deposit it anywhere. So this deposition layer by layer is called the process of this accumulation of particles layer by layer is what we call deposition. And because of deposition, we have seen that sedimentary rocks get formed. Okay, so this was three basic phenomena that we need to understand here. And because of these three basic phenomena, you will find that there are many landscape changes that happens above the surface of the earth. So now let's try to understand what are the different types of landscapes, or then if we talk about weathering, we have talked about the wind, okay, we have talked about the rain, we have also some other agents that causes this type of activities, that is weathering, erosion and deposition. Let's try to understand the different type of agents that causes this phenomena, and what are the sum of the land features that get formed because of these erosional agents. So let's get started with the first topic we have is the work of a river. Okay, let's start with what type of land features works of a river. So what are the type of land features that formed because of river? So first we have to understand the waterfall. We have to understand what is waterfall. Then we have to understand meanders. Then we also have to understand the Oxbow Lake. And then there is also flood plain. We have to understand flood plain. And then levees also we have to understand. Okay, then we have also to understand delta formations. Let's understand all these phenomena one by one. First, waterfall. If you try to define waterfall in one line, it will be like the sudden fall of river. It is like sudden fall of river from a height. Let's understand it. What is this waterfall? So suppose the river is flowing like this. Okay, river is flowing like this, and suddenly what happens, that the rock that over which this river was falling. So first try to understand that this waterfall you will find in upper stages of river. In upper stages of river. So a river basically has three stages. The upper stage, that is the young stage, then you have the mature stage, then that is also called adult stage, then you have the old stage. The old stage comprises of this delta formation and all these things, and it is basically the meeting of river with the oceans, in which the rivers submit its water to the oceans. So first of all, understand this waterfall you will find in upper stages of river, means the river has just originated. Okay, the river has just started flowing. Okay, so in such a stage you will find this waterfall like a features. So suppose the river has flowing on the mountain. Okay, now what happens that this rock on which the river was falling, it suddenly gets a steep slope. A steep slope, when I say, means the suppose the rock was this, suddenly the river which was flowing was like this. Suddenly what happens that the rock over which it was falling, it gets a surface like this. So what will happen, the river will jump from here. It is like jumping of river. So water will fall like this, and this water which is flowing from here, and when it found a steep slope of rock, it will have a great energy with which it will fall. And so with such a great energy, you will find that the area where it is falling, it will form a pool like a structure here. A pool like a structure will form here, and again the river will start flowing like this. So this is a pool like a structure. So this is the height about which I was talking about. What I have written, this is the sudden fall. So this is the sudden fall. The river was flowing like this, but suddenly the river has started flowing like this from a height. So this is the height. And what happens that when rivers suddenly falls from a height, it has a lots of energy, it has a lots of force, and because of this force, when it strikes the rock here, the rock which was initially was like this, it, due to immense amount of force with which water is flowing down, this rock will be, over a period of time, it will form like a deeper type of surface will be formed. This is called Plung Pool. This is called Plung Pool. If you ever come across, if you ever get the opportunity to visit any waterfall, you must visit any waterfall, because we have lots of in India. For example, Jog waterfalls we have. You will find that there are barricadings around this Plung Pool, means around the area around which this waterfall is striking the ground. Why is this area often a type of protected area? This is to ensure that tourists do not enter here, because this is an area which has a great depth, and also the water which is falling has a great amount of force or energy with it, so it can cause destruction or damage. If a person comes here, he may get drowned. So that is why you will find barricading around the area over which the water is falling on the ground. So this was the basic idea of waterfall. So we have dealt with waterfall. Now what is meander? This is another very simple phenomena. Suppose you have this mountain. Okay, suppose you have this mountain, and suppose this is the sun. Have some diagram here, and suppose from here river is coming out. Okay, so when rivers come out, you will find that rivers never follow a straight path. It will always follow a path like this zigzag type of path. Of course, there are some rivers which follow a type of a straight path, not so straight, but of course on an average you will say it is a straight path. For example, Narmada and Tapi rivers, they follow a straight path because they flow in Rift Valley. So that is another case, but most of the Himalayan rivers you will find that they form meanders when they flow. Why they form meanders? That is because when these rivers flow from such a great height, these rivers have a great amount of debris, so it will flow like this. These rivers, when descend from the mountains, they have a lot of erosional activities they have did in the upper this upper stage, and because of lot of debris they contain with the water, the debris get accumulated here and there, and this debris, with accumulation of this debris over the path of the river starts diverging its water, and this phenomena goes on occurring again and again, and that is why we will see that there is not a straight path of river, so river always goes on like this. This is called meandering of rivers. This is actually you should have a diagram like this. This is called the meandering of rivers. A river will flow like this. This is called meandering. This is the path that river follows. Okay, you will find that this is the path that actually river follows. This is called meandering. Okay, you do not have to go in a great detail about meandering, just understand what this phenomena is. Okay, so this is basically a path that is followed by river, in which it follow a zigzag type of path. Okay, because of huge amount of debris that it brings along with it. Okay, so this is all about meanders. Now what is Oxbow Lake? Let's understand with a little modification in this diagram. Okay, so suppose this was the path that river was following. This is a type of meandering path that river was following. Okay, so this was a path. What will happen that when waters are coming, they have a great amount of sediments with it, so this water will strike this coast, and over a period of time you will find, and the deposits are getting accumulated here, and so over a period of time you will find that this coast of river, this bank of river will get widened. It will, first it was, okay, so first it was here, now over a period of time it will get here, then it will get here, because erosional activity is occurring, and then it will get here. Similarly here you will find a lot of erosional activities will take place, so this layer will also, this path will also be like this. Over a period of time this bank will be widened, and here will be the depositional activities. Okay, similarly here is also you will find erosional activities taking place, and similarly here you will find erosional activities taking place on a great scale. Okay, and here you will find deposition. Over a period of time what will happen that this erosion of banks go to that extent that eventually what will happen that these two banks will come so close to each other, these two banks will come so close to each other that these have come so close to each other that a very narrow strip of land is now left, very narrow strip, and now again after some time this narrow strip of land will also be get eroded, and the river will now start flowing like this. Now the river has discarded this path, it has found a very type of shorter path, it has found a type of shortcut, and here the depositional activities were very intense, and so the water will not be allowed to come here. So due to depositional activities that was so intense here, this area will get detached. Similarly here was also depositional activities taking place, so you find that this water which was flowing like this, now this water has started flowing like this. So this is a type of landform that has get formed. This is called Oxbow Lake. You know ox horn type of structure you will get. So this is called Oxbow Lake. It is a detached part of the river. It is the path of the river which the river has now discarded. It has now chosen a very shortcut type of path. So this is called Oxbow Lake. You have Oxbow Lake in India which is called Kavar Lake. Okay, and this Kavar Lake is the largest Oxbow Lake in entire Asia, and this Kavar Lake is located in Bihar. Okay, so this was about Oxbow Lake. Now we have to understand floodplain and levees. So these two are the topics which are interrelated to each other. So let's understand it with a single diagram. Okay, so when you have a frontal view of the river, you will find, when you have frontal view of the river, you will find that rivers, this, suppose this is the valley of river. When we say valley of river, the, suppose river is flowing in this depth area. So river is flowing with this depth, the water is flowing, and you are standing here and you are watching this river. So when you will draw this diagram, you will find that water is flowing like this, and this is the valley of river. Okay, now what happens, that this is, suppose, the normal condition. This is the normal condition when water level is normal. This is normal water level. What happens when this flow of water exceeds its water level, its normal water level? This was the normal water level of the river. When the river exceeds, the amount of water exceeds its normal water level, it will start flowing over its banks. This was the bank of river. This was the bank of river. Okay, now it will start flowing above it. And this phenomena is repeated after every subsequent years. For example, in North Bihar you will find, or in Assam for that matter, you will find that rivers almost every year there are incidents of flooding because of Brahmaputra and the rivers like Kosi in Bihar. What happens, that with frequent flooding of rivers, the water, normal water level you see here, this flows much above this. And because of this, the, you know, the Himalayan rivers come up with a lot of debris. So when this water level will again be reside and will again be, you know, start flowing at its normal level, the water will reside. But what happens is that the debris that it has brought, it will get accumulated on the banks of the river, and you will find that after successive flooding, this bank will get, you know, elevated. These depositions will attain some amount of height, and these are called floodplains. Okay, these are called floodplains, which are extended over to a beyond the banks of the river. Okay, so this is the floodplain. The area which are adjacent to the banks of the river, suppose this is a river flowing. Okay, this is the flow of the river, and the area which are adjacent to it, so the area which are lying along this bank, it will find that it will witness the deposition of sediments over successive flooding. And these sediments, when get deposited over the banks and get spreaded over a large area, this area is called floodplain. Okay, now what is levees? What happens that whenever this normal water level rises, this bank of river, you will find that after successive rising of the level of water in the rivers, you will find that the bank, in the bank, this deposition of materials will be much more rapid than the floodplain area. The deposition is also occurring in the floodplain area, but the rate of the deposition here is much more higher, and that is why you will see that an elevated piece of land will be formed here along the bank of the river. And this piece of land that has get formed along the bank of the river is what we call levees. Right, so this was floodplain and levees. Now what is delta? Okay, so when we talk about delta formation takes place only in such rivers the water of which carries a lot amount of debris. For example, you will not find delta formation in the rivers of Narmada and Tapi. Why? Because the rivers like Narmada and Tapi do not, you know, have much amount of debris. So let's understand what is this delta formation. Okay, So what happens when rivers flow? Suppose this is suppose this is river water. Okay, so when rivers flow, what happens that it has debris which are of different sizes. So the bigger sizes sediments will be flowing with on the bottom of the valley of the river. Then we will have a smaller fragments. Then we have a smaller fragments, and then we have further smaller fragments. And now this bigger fragments, the bigger sized debris will get accumulated in the very upper stages of the river. Okay, because movement of such debris requires lot amount of energy, and that is present only in the upper stages of the river when river is descending. Now the fragments which are smaller to these larger fragments get deposited when the river, the flow of water, the speed with which the flow of water starts reducing up to some extent. When the flow of river, the speed of the flow of river gets reduced to a much extent that the river is not able to flow beyond, or the river is just just to submit its water to the ocean. In that situation you will find that the smaller particle fragments or the sediments will accumulated on the mouth of the river. So suppose this is the river that was flowing, and what happens, these smaller fragments will get accumulated on the mouth of the river. It will get accumulated on the mouth of the river in triangular like formation. Okay, triangular like formation, you will see that this get accumulated and water will like flow like this, and ultimately it will meet to the sea. It will ultimately meet to the sea. So this triangular like formation, so what is delta? It is a triangular shaped depositional feature. Depositional feature of rivers when it meets the sea or the ocean, right? So it's basically deposition of the very small fine sediments that get accumulated finally over the area where river meets the oceans, or where the river submit its water. Okay, so this was all about the works of a river. Now we have to study about the works of sea waves. Okay, let's understand. The works of sea waves is not very much of significance, but let's understand what are the different type of features that you will find when you will see the works of the sea waves. Okay, so when we say sea waves, what is sea waves? Sea waves are actually type of energy. You will see. Now we will deal with sea waves. And what are the types of work that is done by sea waves? First you have to study about sea caves. Then you have to study about sea arches. And then you have to study about sea cliffs. Okay, and then you have to study also about stacks. So here we will also study stacks. So 4 types of erosional features or erosional features you have to study. First, understand what is sea wave. So when we say sea wave, do not confuse, it is a type of energy. It is a energy which causes movement of uppermost layer of seawater. Uppermost layer of seawater. Now let's understand it. So suppose this is the uppermost surface of the sea. What happens when wind strikes this surface? This surface water gets elevated to some height. It gets elevated. Now it will fall. When this water will fall, it will again cause a rising of the water which is found here. So it will now rise and it will subside. The energy gets transformed. Again when it will fall, here so this type of wave will occur. So this is called wave energy. Now I am calling it energy. So whenever there is energy, it will always cause erosional activity. So it causes movement of the uppermost layer of the seawater or the surface of the seawater. So whenever we come across energy, it will certainly cause erosional activity. So 4 types of erosional activities that we have to see. Let's see the sea caps. So to understand sea caps, we have to have a 3-dimensional diagram, which may not I will able to draw here, but let's try. Okay, so suppose this is the rock and this is the sea water. So suppose this is the rock we have. Okay, this is the rock we have and this is the sea water. Now what will happen, that the sea waves, after continuous strike of sea waves, when sea waves will strike this part of the rock, what will happen, that you will find that a small amount of cave like structure will get formed, because this part of rock has get eroded. This part of rock, this is rock, but this part has get eroded and the water can now easily enter here. Okay, the water now can easily enter here. So this type of formation is called the sea caves. Now what will happen, after a period of time you will find that this sea cave will form it after a continuous erosion by the sea waves. You will find that a tunnel like structure will get formed beneath this rock. What I mean to say, suppose this was the rock. So after continuous wave that was hitting, after the continuous strike of wave, you will find that a tunnel like a structure will get formed. So water will certainly blow from here and it will come across and it will flow from here now. So this water which was striking here, now it will be able to flow like this from a tunnel like a structure, okay, beneath the rock. So this type of tunnel like a structure, when it gets formed, you will find that this type of the rock will now get like this and the water is flowing across the rock. Okay, a tunnel like a structure gets formed. This is called sea arches. Now over a period of time, what will happen, that even this sea arches will be subjected to the erosional activities of the sea waves, and this part which you are seeing, this will fall down. This part will again be falling down and you will see that here remains a pillar like a structure and water can easily now move across here. You will see there is a pillar like a structure. Now this pillar like a structure is called a stack. This pillar like a structure is called a stack, and again this pillar like a structure will again be subjected to erosional activities, and the height of this pillar will get reduced to such an extent. Okay, and so this will now be called as stumps. So these are the erosional activities which you had to understand about sea waves. Okay, now we have another feature of the work of glaciers. So this is very easy to understand, the work of glaciers. Okay, let's try and understand what are the different types of erosional activities or the erosional landforms that are caused by the glaciers. So before that, first understand what is glacier. And for understanding glacier, so this is about glacier. So first understand what is this glacier. Just I will go to a Hindi word. Just take the Hindi word of this glacier, which is basically Himnad. And this Himnad is made up of two words. Him, we call Himalaya. What does it mean? Him means ice or the snow. So Him means ice or snow. And Nad means actually Nadi, means river. So now I think the definition of glacier is clear in front of you. So basically it is river of snow. So river of snow is called glacier. Very simple to understand. So what happens that when you go up, in the next chapter we will study it in great detail. When you go up, the temperature starts decreasing, and after certain height, if you come across the if you ever come across to visit mountains of such heights, you will find that there are glaciers found there. These glaciers are basically rivers of snow, which you will not be easily, this flow of snow in the river, you will not, is not very easily perceptible. You cannot observe because this is very slow. Now when snow flow in the river, the flow is very much slow, unlike the water. What happens when you put a piece of ice and some amount of water to the same plate, to the same sliding plate? If you put a piece of ice and if you put some amount of water here, the water will flow very rapidly, but the snow will take time. But the amount of energy or the amount of frictional force that this snow will cause, that will be much more than the amount of frictional activity that will be caused by river. Okay, that is why the amount of erosion that is caused by the glaciers are much higher than the river. So when the glaciers move, what happens that if suppose there is a rock, beneath it, suppose here is a rock. Okay, I have to use a different colored marker here. So suppose this is a rock. Now the glaciers are moving over it. So what will happen? The frictional force caused between the snow and the rock will reduce this rock to smaller fragments. Okay, so if there are so many rocks found here and there, these all rocks will be reduced into smaller fragments, and this phenomena occurs on both sides of the bank of glaciers. Okay, these are smaller fragments of rocks you will find get deposited on the both sides of the glacial flow. This deposition of the rocks or the debris of the rock or the withered rocks are what we call the moraines. Okay, so moraines are the deposition or the rock fragments. So these are the rock fragments basically that are deposited by glaciers when it causes a huge amount of frictional force on these rocks. So these are moraines. Okay, then you have another thing, work of wind you have to study. Okay, and let's understand what is this wind. What are the type of works that are, what are the type of landforms that are formed by winds? So okay, so this is the last topic we have, the works of the wind. In this you have to study about mushroom rock. Okay, let's first write it, mushroom rock. Then you have to study about the sand dunes. Okay, sand dunes. And then you have to study about loess. First I must tell you one thing, that all these features that we are going to study is a peculiar feature of arid regions or the desert area. You will not find sand dunes formation in plain area of Himalayas or Gangetic plains. This is something you will find in arid regions, in areas where lots of sand are there, in desert area. First, understand mushroom rock. What is this idea of mushroom rock? So as the name itself suggests, a rock which is of mushroom shaped is called mushroom rock. Okay. You see the wind speed in desert area is quite high. Okay. And why this speed is high? Because of simple reason that the temperature there is very high. When the wind flows in the arid regions or the desert regions, the wind along with it carries a lot amount of particles, smaller particles. Okay, so what happens if suppose this is the ground and here is a rock, here is a rock line, right? What happens when winds flow? Winds carry particles of different sizes. The heavier particles or the heavier particles or the particles of greater sizes will flow near to the ground, and the particles which are not so which are little less heavier will flow just above it. So it is a type of a stratified type of formation. You will see it will flow here, and the particles which are very small, which are lighter particles, will flow above it. Okay, these light particles are less in density, it will flow like this. These are very less in density. Okay, these are not so much in density, it has very less in density. Now these lighter particles are going to strike here. These lighter particles will strike here, and it will cause some amount of erosion here. It will cause some amount of erosion. Okay, now this medium sized particles will strike here, and it will cause a significant amount of erosion. So it will cause a significant amount of erosion. Now these heavier particles are going to strike at the bottom, and it is going to have a massive impact on the rocks. Okay, it will have a massive impact on the rock, and you will find that this will cause a great amount of erosion. So the rock which was like this, will over a period of time will get reduced into this shape. Okay, it will get reduced into this shape. Again the heavier particle will strike here, so this will again form like this, and this will be formed like this, and this again here will be some amount of erosion, so it will be formed like this. Again the same process will repeat, and you will find that a very small type of piece is left at the bottom, this. Okay, and this activity is also occurring from this side also. So we will find that actually this gets formed like this. So you will have an umbrella like a structure that gets formed. This is a very thin rock structure, and over it this is a large structure that gets formed. This type of rock is called the mushroom rock, and you will find this, you will find such type of rocks only in desert areas or arid areas, where this type of heavier particles cause a large amount of erosion, or this you see a large amount of friction on the rock particles or the rock structure that is lying just beside, just above the earth's surface. So this is all about mushroom rock. Now what is sand dunes? What is sand dunes? Sand dunes are basically hills of sand that gets deposited by wind. These are hills of sand that gets deposited by wind. Okay. Okay, of course this is also a phenomena that you will find in the arid regions or the desert area. What happens in this sand dunes formation? Suppose this is the desert, and when wind flow it carries along with it sand particles, and when the speed of wind goes down, these sand particles start deposited in such a manner. Okay, in such a manner you will see that sand particles get deposited. Okay, so it is wind, and the wind is causing fall of these sand particles and accumulation of these sand particles here. So this type of a small hill get formed, and this type of a structure is called sand wind. Remind you, this sand wind is not a permanent type of a structure that you find in desert. It is a temporary type of a structure. This sand wind, this sand dunes which you find here, after some time you will find that when a strong wind will hit this sand dune, the sands of this hill will get carried away, and when this sand dunes, the sand of these sand dunes get carried away, it will get formed some elsewhere. So sand dunes are regularly shifting from one place to another place, and that depends on the speed of the wind. Okay, so this was about sand dunes. Now the last is the loess. What is this loess? Loess are basically very fine dust particles that gets deposited over an area beyond desert limits, over an area beyond desert boundary. So this is a depositional feature, very fine dust particle that gets deposited. So it is a depositional feature. This is a depositional feature. This mushroom rock was not depositional, it was an erosional feature. Sand dunes and loess are depositional features of wind. Okay, very fine dust particles get deposited over area beyond desert boundary. Why I am telling about beyond desert boundary? Why not within desert boundary? Okay, let's understand. I have already told you that when winds flow, the larger particles are flowing just close to the ground. Okay, the smaller particles are above it, and then again smaller particles are above it, and the very fine particles, these very fine particles are very low in density, are flowing these smaller particles. Now when the wind speed goes down, these particles get accumulated near the surface, but you again have wind with some amount of velocity. Now when this wind come across any type of settled area or any type of area which has substantial amount of vegetation, when this winds strike the vegetation like plants or trees, the wind speed automatically goes down, and because the wind speed goes down, these fine particles that were being carried by these winds, now they will get accumulated on this area which has a substantial amount of vegetation. And so you will find that an area which has some amount of vegetation, these fine particles have got deposited over here. So suppose this was the boundary of the desert, and here this was the boundary of desert, and here there are some amount of vegetations that are there. So this loess, when it will come across this vegetative area, you will find that the wind speed has gone significantly down, and because the wind speed has gone down, these particles, these fine dust particles that were being carried by the wind are now getting deposited into this area. Okay, and because of this deposition of this very fine sand soil particles, you will find that this deposited area, you will find this area to be very fertile and very productive. And we have an example in China. Okay, so whenever you will find this lowest formation, you will find that that area is productive and you will have some amount of crop that is being produced there. So this was the end of this part 2, and I think I have covered the entire chapter. Yes. Okay, so this was the second part, and with this second part and with this lowest topic, we have come to the conclusion of this chapter. Okay, so this chapter is very significant if you want to understand the subsequent geographical phenomena. So very carefully go through the entire lecture once, twice, and even thrice, and note down even every single diagram I have mentioned here and try to understand. Okay, and even if you after that you are not able to understand or grasp it, just comment in the comment box. I will try to help your doubt. I will try to just clear your doubts about all these phenomena. Okay, so just keep doing hard work, because only this is the thing that will pay you back. Okay, so up to that, when we will meet again in the chapter number 4, that is of the atmosphere. Okay, up till that, keep doing hard work. Okay, keep yourself safe in this pandemic. Okay, so thank you.